In 1966, the United States Military Assistance Command Vietnam recorded 7,832 malaria cases among American forces. That same year, total U.S. killed in action was 6,053. The mosquito was outperforming the NVA. But the mosquito was not what soldiers remembered. What they remembered was a sound, a dry clicking, like fingernails tapping canvas somewhere in the dark near their sleeping bag. It meant something 8 inches long, armored like a lobster, carrying venom more complex than a rattlesnake's, was already on their body. The men who fought in Vietnam trained for bullets, mortars, and ambushes. Nobody trained them for what lived under their feet. Triple canopy rainforest blocks 95% of sunlight before it reaches the ground. Underneath that ceiling, humidity locks above 80%. Soil temperature holds steady 24 to 28 degrees around the clock every day of the year. A near-perfect incubation chamber for every biting, stinging, blood-drinking arthropod in Southeast Asia. The southwest monsoon dumps up to 2,500 millimeters of rain between May and October, filling bomb craters and wheel ruts with standing water. Anopheles mosquitoes breed in that water within 10 to 14 days, exactly matching Falciparum malaria's incubation cycle. Unlike the desert, there was no daytime reprieve. Unlike Europe, there was no winter kill. The jungle never turned off, and every insect control technique that actually worked required base camp infrastructure. DDT fogging, screened hooches, and canopy defoliation all depended on concrete floors, generator power, and weekly spray schedules. None of it followed a rifleman into the bush. There was no way to fog the ground around a Marine lying motionless in an L-shaped ambush on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The 1st Cavalry Division learned this in the Ia Drang Valley, October through November 1965. A chloroquine-resistant falciparum strain peculiar to the Central Highlands gutted the division, the equivalent of nearly a battalion lost not to enemy fire, but to mosquito bites. Operations Lincoln and Mosby each produced a clearly delineated malaria spike 14 days after their midpoint. Hundreds of men pulled from line duty. Major General Harry W. O'Kinnard, the 1st Cavalry Division's commanding general, filed after action comments in 1966, calling malaria a combat effectiveness emergency and requesting priority resupply of anti-malarial tablets. The mosquito was removing more soldiers from the fight than the NVA was, but the mosquito was invisible. What the men remembered, what woke them at 0 dark 30 with their skin on fire, was 8 inches long, armored like a lobster, and already inside the boot. Scolopendra subspinipes dahani, the Vietnamese giant centipede. Up to 10 inches of glossy, segmented exoskeleton, 21 armored plates, 42 clawed legs, each leg tipped sharp enough to puncture skin just by walking across it. Veterans who saw one described it the same way, a section of oiled chain pulling itself forward in a wave. Bigger than a Snickers bar, shorter than a bayonet, heavy enough to feel on your chest through a poncho liner. Its venom is among the most complex ever characterized in any arthropod, 543 distinct proteins, more components than a rattlesnake carries. The signature peptide SSTX blocks potassium channels in heart, nerve, and muscle simultaneously. A 3-gram centipede kills a 45-gram mouse in under 30 seconds. On a human, the bite produces a burning, branding iron pain that peaks between 1 and 5 hours and can persist for 2 full days. One bite will not kill a healthy adult, but in the field, no hot water immersion, no antihistamine, 12 hours of patrol ahead, a centipede bite was a medical event that could sideline a man for days. The animal hunted at night. Peak activity between 24 and 30 degrees, the exact temperature range under jungle leaf litter and inside a sleeping soldier's boot. They sought warmth. Soldiers were the warmest thing on the ground. Specialist John Podlaski, 25th Infantry Division Wolfhounds, described what that meant. Centipedes, millipedes, lizards, frogs, rats, scorpions, land and water leeches attacked us whenever we entered their domain. The liquid bug juice supplied by the military kept many of the flying insects from landing on bare skin, but did nothing to prevent those long-beaked malaria carrying insects from biting you through clothes. Every infantry memoir describes the same dawn ritual. Boots inverted and slapped against a log or helmet. Poncho liner snapped out. Sleeping bag unrolled inside out. Rucksack side pockets turned out. Canteen cups inspected. You did it every morning because the alternative was putting your foot into something that would put you on a medevac. A Viet Cong guerrilla named Nguyen Hoa Jai would later testify about what a centipede bite drove one of his fellow guerrillas to do. That testimony is coming. But first, what the centipede shared the jungle with. Land leeches that sensed body heat from meters away and latched to groins, armpits, and eyelids. Weaver ants that rained by the thousand from disturbed nests onto tank crews and infantry alike. Scorpions curled inside boots and tank turrets. Rove beetles whose crushed bodies blistered skin like a chemical burn. And above all, Anopheles dirus, the real killer, invisible, silent, patient. In May 1971, during Operation Lamson 720, a USMA CVSOG team working with ARV and Long Range Patrol took shelter in a captured NVA tunnel in the A Shau Valley. In the pitch dark, centipedes came. Veterans on the team described them as at least 10 inches long and as thick as a thumb. One team member was bitten on the face and abdomen. He was bee allergic. Anaphylactic shock began inside the tunnel, his face swelling shut, his airway closing. He survived only because an ARVN medic had an atropine auto-injector. It is the single most vivid documented American centipede incident of the war. The clicking of the legs in the dark, then the burning, then a man fighting to breathe underground. The Viet Cong had their own arthropod arsenal. Lieutenant Jack Flowers, 1st Engineer Battalion, 1st Infantry Division, call sign Rat 6, went down into the Cu Chi tunnel system 97 separate times between 1968 and 1969. On one descent, a tripwire-rigged box dumped scorpions onto a man and his team. The soldier came out screaming, refusing to ever go into a tunnel again. The Viet Cong had weaponized the jungle itself. Scorpion boxes on tripwires, hornets' nests hung as pull traps over trails, bamboo vipers tied by string to tunnel ceilings at face height. Flowers described what it felt like to go down those holes. His senses were never more acute. In the tunnels, his adrenaline was pumping like a river. He said he could hear his heart beating. But the centipede and the scorpion were the war's psychological wound. The mosquito was its operational one. In 1967, 58.5% of all U.S. Army malaria cases fell on 11B light weapons infantry, a specialty that comprised only 15.3% of the force. Malaria was not a general disease. It was an infantry disease. Across the entire war, roughly 65,000 American malarial admissions. Each case averaged more than a month of duty lost. Over 200,000 man days per year erased. Specialist Jim Manuel, Army enlisted 1968 to 69, contracted falciparum twice despite taking his chloroquine primaquine tablets. He said the pills did not work for everybody because he remembered other guys taking them, but still getting sick. The mosquito did not need to kill. It only needed to remove a man from the line for 30 days. Multiply that across 65,000 cases, and the Anopheles achieved what no NVA regiment could: sustained, invisible attrition across every unit in every province for the duration of the war. The North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong had it worse. No air-evacuated hospitals, no weekly prophylaxis pipeline, often no bed nets. A captured North Vietnamese Army interrogation record from 1965 documented a company of 113 men that lost 11 killed in action and 23 to malaria between February and June, a 20% attrition rate on the march alone. 12 captured North Vietnamese Army soldiers were blood sampled in November 1965. 8 tested positive for falciparum. Then there is the testimony of Nguyen Hoa Jai, a Viet Cong guerrilla who fought from the late 1950s to 1975 and who was interviewed years after the war. He described the jungle's toll: snakes, rats as large as cats, mosquitoes, spiders, centipedes. He said, "One of my co-guerrillas committed suicide after being bitten because the pain was so intense." It is the only recorded testimony of a life lost to a centipede's pain in the entire war, and it was on the enemy's side. The Americans tried everything. The 75% DEET repellent sweated off in an hour, dissolved plastic canteen gaskets, and ate the stock finish on M16 rifles. Troops threw it away. The weekly chloroquine and primaquine pill caused nausea, severe enough that up to 30% of troops in some units admitted skipping doses. Even perfect compliance failed against resistant strains. Permethrin-treated uniforms did not exist during Vietnam. The Army developed them in the 1980s specifically because the war proved that untreated fabric was no barrier at all. The daily dapsone supplement cut falciparum rates but caused fatal agranulocytosis in rare cases. At least 8 American deaths were attributed not to the disease, but to the drug meant to prevent it. The war forced both sides to reinvent anti-malarial medicine. Walter Reed produced mefloquine. Mao Zedong personally directed Project 523, a top-secret Chinese program that screened over 40,000 compounds, and in 1972 isolated artemisinin from sweet wormwood. Tu Youyou won the 2015 Nobel Prize for that discovery. Those two drug families now save roughly 500,000 lives a year worldwide. The Army's permethrin-treated combat uniforms, the Armed Forces Pest Management Board, and the Australian Army Malaria Institute are all direct descendants of Vietnam's failures. What veterans carry home is not the sound. It is the sound. The click of hard-shelled beetles on a windowsill. The buzz of a cicada in a suburban backyard. The feel of anything crawling across bedding at 3 in the morning. VIA clinicians note these as among the most reliable sleep-onset intrusive stimuli, distinct from combat triggers, but no less persistent. Centipedes are still in the A-Shao, still clicking across the leaf litter in the dark. They do not know the war ended. They were there before it started.